Hi everyone, thank you for joining me live, and for everyone who will be joining me on the replay as well, thank you for joining me and watching the video. My name is Isabel from healthandnaturallife.com. I work with energy healing, energy clearing, animal communication, all things energy and consciousness, all things that help us be more aware of our inner energy systems, of how we work, of how we interface, interact and create our reality, our connections, our relationships, our life pretty much around us. On this topic, on this video, I'm going to talk about something that just came through this past week, and right after the download type of information hit, it just felt that it wanted to be shared. That's as best as I can put it. So I'm not sure for whom this is going to be, for whom it is important. It's always the case that it's important for me, of course, but it just felt that someone was going to really benefit from this information. And it is the topic of our fear of pain. And this is an interesting topic, and I'll let you know how this actually came about, because it was quite an unlikely roundabout type of way of getting to this topic, but it seems to be one that we don't want to look at. Fear of pain, physical pain, and especially of psychological and emotional pain. And I've had that response even from the emails that I sent saying that this is going to be the topic that I'm going to cover this week. So for whomever this resonates, I really hope it's helpful. So let me start. How did this actually come about? Talking about our fear of pain and our fear of suffering in a very innocent way. I was just one of these days, this past week, walking about an avenue that I have right near my place, and was just enjoying the trees, enjoying the birds. It has a lot of nature on this avenue, so at the end of it there's a little spot where there's a lot of trees, places for people to sit, to exercise, and I was just standing there. I just felt so peaceful, and just was enjoying also the sunset, and I was just enjoying completely standing still, not doing anything, just hanging by a tree, just standing there. I was just feeling the energy actually of the trees, the interplay, and I felt that people that were passing behind me, they were looking at me. Of course, here's someone that's just doing nothing, just completely standing still. People are curious, so they will look, but I could feel my internal response of contraction, of fear actually. It was a, shouldn't do this, I have to go. It wasn't a mental response, it was really that fear of something, and the discomfort. And this is something that most of us experience, I would say. When I came back home, I was just pondering on what exactly was that response. Why the contraction, the anxiety? What was the worst case scenario that could come from me just standing, enjoying the energy of trees and people walking past? Okay, so people may criticize me. In my head I was projecting that. Okay, people criticizing me. What's the worst case scenario that could come out of that? Someone might get angry at me. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? They could come by and just attack me, physically attack me, beat me. At this point, my conscious mind was just going, well, that's far out. But it was there. And even with that, I just continued, okay, and what's the worst case scenario from that? It wasn't even death, because that was the ultimate case end of scenario. It was the suffering, the pain that would cause physically, and that's when it just clicked. So the fear of death is usually one of the biggest fears we all have to face, but for me what had more energy was the fear of the physical pain itself, of the suffering. And for me this makes sense because there is a lot of physical pain that I've experienced in the past, from surgeries, ahoy, lots of things like that. So I have a lot of trauma and physical pain, aversion inbuilt in my tissues. But I started noticing, okay, so this is not just the fear of pain itself, it's a fear of suffering, because pain as a physical sensation, it's uncomfortable, It can be, but at the same time, it can be just a particular quality of experience. And I hope this makes sense. I'm not trying to minimize the discomfort, the suffering that can come out of pain, but I do want to make that distinction that I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of between physical pain and the mental and emotional discomfort that come from them. Physical pain is a physical sensation. Our body knows how to handle pain, and that pain is a response to our nervous system, just indicating something here needs attention. And if we ourselves, mentally and emotionally, don't resist, don't push against that pain, then the energy itself flows. It's almost like the energy impulse, the information gets pinged, it goes to the brain, and it kind of fades, the sensations. The fact that we hold on, we don't hold on per se, we push against, and that is the same pretty much as holding on. The fact that we push against those sensations, we contract around the places where we do feel the physical pain, that's what's keeping the energy from actually flowing, delivering the message, and disappearing. There is something that I heard, I'm not sure from whom, and no, I'm not remembering now, but it's that energy in movement is always pleasurable. I think it, yeah, I'm seeing his face, I'm not remembering his name. So energy that's stagnant or that we're pushing against, that we're holding in place, that creates a build up, an impossibility of that energy to actually flow, and that's what creates the physical discomfort and makes it linger even more. When we actually release the tension and stop pushing against, stop contracting around, stop applying force to not want that pain there, when we allow the energy of that pain to actually flow through us, we do feel it as a pleasurable release. And I'm just going to use the example that probably most of us are aware of, and sexual energy and orgasm is exactly that. There's a buildup of energy that gets pushed, contracted. It feels uncomfortable, it feels painful if you contract that much energy. But as soon as you let it move, the energy moves and you feel the pleasure of that release, of the free movement of the energy again. And that happens with all types of sensations. Where there is energy blocked, pushed against, there will be tension and pain. Where that tension is released, the energy starts to flow and we feel relief, or all the way into an orgasmic, pleasurable, blissful experience. So for physical pain, I'm just going to give you a few suggestions, although this video wasn't about physical pain, but apparently wanted to come first. So don't push against the sensation. Don't try to contract around it, and it's not even a conscious thing, it's an unconscious. We have a mental projection of what it feels like to be in pain and the suffering that it can cause us, so we hold against it and we push against it because we have a lot of that still inbuilt in our tissues. The best that we can do is to actually relax wherever we see that we're applying force, so contracting or being tense, pushing against something. Wherever you feel the tension, just as best you can, relax the tension. Breathe through that spot. Instead of feeling it contracted, just imagine that there's a little contracted, tiny ball of energy there, and you're breathing into it, making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because you're creating spaciousness in it. And you're allowing that energy that first was contracted and unable to move, you're giving it the space, the room to start moving again. And again, that movement is pleasurable, and the energy then starts to find its way. Energy is intelligent, so it finds its way through and out. So that's the best way that we can actually handle physical pain. So imagine a very light, innocent example. You stub your toe. Our usual, I've done this, our usual reaction is to push against it and tense up and be angry and all that stuff. if we actually allow ourselves to come back into our bodies, be present as best we can wherever we find tension, release the tension, breathe, keep breathing, release the tension, we'll find that very, 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 very fast the signal will move through us and be done with it. Something else that is an interesting experiment if you want to try is that pain itself, and this might be more useful probably for emotional and mental pain, because that's the one that we tend to linger and hold on to unwillingly, but we do that. Just imagine pain as a jagged type of irregular wave pattern, frequency of energy that feels like this, irregular, jagged. If you just imagine that you're bringing a wave of energy that just feels coherent, something that feels peaceful, or something that feels beautiful, something that feels relaxed, just use your imagination, feel how this comes to you. A wave of energy that feels coherent, and you bring that wave of coherent energy to the place where you feel the pain and the jagged type of energy, and you just imagine that, that coherent energy is just lingering there, giving an example almost for the jagged energy, because energy will tend to entrain to the strongest amplitude and coherence of a field. If we give a jagged, incoherent signal a very coherent and strong high amplitude type of signal, it will help the energy that's a little like this, it will help soothe it, it will help it entrain to that more coherent signal, and you'll feel, at least again, a relief, and you'll start to feel that the area starts to expand, to relax, and the pain signal will change as well. So those are my suggestions for physical pain itself. And just one more, because this is important, and I know it for me, and I'm pretty sure that for a lot of us, even the physical pain that we experience has a lot of emotional and mental causes behind it. And a lot of it comes from trauma, really the big events, or even small events that were repeated multiple times in our lives that we weren't able to process, and that energy, that incoherent energy, is stuck, is stored somewhere in our energy field, and that incoherent signal is always pinging to our body, it's always sending its signals, it's always interfering with the natural coherent signal of our organs, of our systems. So that trauma energy, so long as it's still in our field, it will always be an interference signal with the naturally coherent signs of our body, and that's what creates the imbalances, let's just put it like that, because it can manifest in so many ways. There are two resources that I'm going to put in the description box for this video. One of them is for trauma itself, and it's Brent Baum's work. He is a brilliant therapist that works with trauma and with energy and the emotions behind trauma specifically, that then manifest as the physical symptoms. He has a couple of videos, at least a couple of videos that I've seen of his lectures in the Theosophical Society. I'll link them in the description box. Another perhaps lighter, but not necessarily any less important resource could be a book that makes a parallel in between physical imbalances and their emotional and mental usual causes, so possible contributors to those physical imbalances, because everything in our body is created again from the outside in. We've talked about this in other videos, and it's that we are, let's use the cliche almost at this point, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So our broader self is the one that's kind of condensing energy levels until we get to the most condensed form that we see and experience as the physical body. So our physical body itself is inside the mental body, permeated, and inside imagine a sphere of the emotional body, and our physical body and our emotional body are inside the sphere of our mental body, permeated by the mental body and inside and being created and informed by those bodies. So our physical body is, I won't say at the mercy of, because that's just not a good expression, but our physical body is almost obliged to comply with the information in our emotional body that's permeating it and the information of our even broader body, the mental body. So whatever we hold in mind, whatever we hold in our emotions, everything is informing the functioning of our body. Our body by itself, it's brilliant, it's intelligent, it has a native wisdom and has access, every cell in your body, every cell in my body has access to the infinite wisdom that exists, in the infinite wisdom of our own eternal essence, or of our own broader self. But because we are inside those bodies that are the emotional, the mental, and higher of course, but these three, physical, emotional, and mental, are the ones that most inform our experience, our 3D experience. Our physical body needs to comply with the information that's receiving from these two larger bodies. So it's very useful for us to be aware of what potential mental and emotional causes are translating and forcing the body to show as a physical response. And that's why it used to puzzle me why, how could books actually describe, okay, you have this physical issue, it's usually because of this, or this. And I just, how the hell would you know? We're all unique, we're all different. So how can you actually give a list and be so accurate? And that's the part that used to freak me out. How can you be so accurate? It is because of this, because we physically exist inside our mental body, and our mental body, with the beliefs that most of us share in our society and in our cultures, have okay, so the beliefs that we share in our societies are common pretty much to all of us. And although the emotional responses might be slightly different, and the physical responses as well, there is a lot of commonality. And a brilliant book that I have found to make this correlation, and I'll link it as well, it's Ina Segal's The Secret Language of Your Body. And that book was the one that made me go, what the hell? All of that actually makes sense. And for everyone that I've used that book with, even my clients, and that I've shared and suggested that book to, everyone says the same thing. It's like, wow, that's quite amazing. So that's another resource. And that's, I think, all that I wanted to cover in terms of the physical pain and the pain that we do experience itself. And now let's go to something else that's slightly different, but is more prevalent for most of us, and it is the mental and emotional pain. For most of us, we are blessed that we are not so much in physical pain, or we don't have that much fear of physical pain, although most of us do, but we are afraid of discomfort because we have a lot of mental and emotional fears, which aren't fears, they are more anxiety responses. And that creates a lot of pushback from us and a lot of suffering. So the name of this video could be as well, our fear of pain or our fear of suffering. Because for the most part, our fear of pain is a fear of suffering. Even with physical pain, if you are able to be fully present and enter the sensations that you're feeling in your body, you won't suffer. You'll just feel the quality, again, of that experience, of that signal, and it will just be okay. It will move through you. The body will do what it needs to do, and you can be just a witness, just experience, not detached, fully present, but just noticing a different type of experience that is that physical pain. Suffering is something very, very different, and suffering is a mental and emotional resistance that we're putting against energy, or against feeling a certain type of sensations. And most of our pains, or most of our fears, are against this. We don't want to feel discomfort. We don't want to feel those sensations that we label as painful. And for instance, most of our fears aren't fears at all. Fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of being judged, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of anything that may come to your mind. That's not a fear. Fear in itself would be a very natural, physical, visceral response to a life-threatening situation where the body kicks in and our innate intelligence just kicks in and knows what to do. Everything, almost, I won't say categorically because there might be exceptions, but pretty much everything else is just a mental and emotional anxiety signal. It's a projection. It's something that we are trying to avoid. We don't want to either experience something, or we're holding on to something because we don't want to lose it. So most of our fears are anxiety responses, and most of our pushing against it is what's causing the pain, meaning the suffering. We do feel it physically, but it isn't a natural, so to speak, pain. Like stubbing your toe would be a natural response of pain. That fear of rejection, that fear of failure, that fear of success, it creates a physical discomfort that we have associated and labeled as pain. And because of that labeling from our part, and we have learned to judge it as bad, as wrong, as don't want, we push against the physical sensations themselves. So we push against the discomfort. And what does that do? What we talked about already. That just keeps the energy locked in place, and it's just creating an accumulation of more and more and more and more energy that we then stuff somewhere in our fields, and that creates the traumas. Even it can be a big trauma, or it can be one of those repeated hits that we keep on projecting, and we keep on adding energy to that little bubble of energy that we're pushing against. We don't want to feel it, and that then starts trickling through the bodies into the physical, creating the imbalances that can manifest as whatever makes most sense actually for that energy to express as. So for kind of lost my train of thought a little bit, and let's just say it like this. There's a fear of pain that doesn't help us, and there's a fear of discomfort that really doesn't help us. And the fact that these two are interconnected for us just comes from the fact that we learned to push against discomfort. We learn to push against things that in our body don't feel like pleasure or like calmness. So anything that jumps up at us in terms of I'm feeling something, we immediately go, do I like it? Don't I like it? And if we're going to I don't like it, then we try to push against it, and that just pushes against the energy, creates tension, creates the energy blocks, creates the suffering that we're trying to avoid. And it makes a lot of sense then for us to fear that suffering, because on a subconscious level, sometimes very much, quite a few layers removed from our conscious awareness, we are aware that we are keeping these suffering signals all around us, and we are afraid that they'll stay there forever. So we know that because we are pushing against them, they are staying there. And if we keep on pushing against them, they can stay there for the rest of our lives. And that's part of the fear, if that makes sense. So we are afraid of us holding on to the tension that we're putting against the sensations because we have labeled them and decided that they are bad. Saying it like this just sounds like madness. And it kind of is, in a way. It's madness, but it is something that we're all kind of taught almost to do. We feel something, we immediately judge. Do I like it? Don't I like it? If I don't like it, I'm going to apply tension and push against it. And on a subconscious level, I do know that as I push against it, it will stay there because the energy does need to flow. And if I'm holding it there, it will stay there. It will continue to cause me that suffering, and it will continue to even increase in intensity, because next time that something similar appears, I will do the same. I will add more energy to that. And that just creates, our nervous system just starts to go, I have too many of these things here. So we become a little bit, it's not intolerant, but very sensitive to anything that might cause us to add to that tension, to that perceived suffering. The solution to all of this, to the fear of suffering, is what we've been talking in pretty much all of the videos. We have to stop pushing against the energy. It will be uncomfortable, perhaps in the beginning, as we start to feel all of the sensations that feel uncomfortable. And uncomfortable, it's still a projection, because again, if we fully become present, come to the body, don't pay attention to the stories, just be fully present as best you can with the sensation, breathe through it, imagine it expanding, give it spaciousness to flow, to increase instead of being so tight, so compacted. Increase the spaciousness, visualize it or feel it, however it comes to you. And you'll notice that as you do that and as you're present, again, energy and movement is pleasurable, and you'll start to feel a relief. It might take a few tries, because some of these things, we have a lot stored of the, I don't want to feel this. So it might take a bit of time, a bit of love, of self-compassion to actually allow it to start moving. But as we're present with the sensation, breathe through it, and just imagine that space starting to increase, it will start to move. And our nervous system will start to come to a much more centered place, where it has a beautiful balance in between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic responses. So it becomes much more resilient. So whatever happens outside, you don't feel that fragility almost. You feel much more capable of navigating, of handling anything, because your nervous system isn't trying to juggle all the balls, let's call it that you have in your energy field of things that you're pushing against. No, your nervous system is just free at some point, of course, but it becomes freer and freer and freer, and it can deal with whatever comes to you, and you will feel it viscerally. Your paleocortex, your reptile brain, knows what's happening all around you, so it will start to feel more centered, more settled, more secure, and you'll feel that from the inside out, that inner security, that inner feeling of safety, that inner awareness and presence and groundedness to pay attention to whatever is happening outside of you. And all of this just comes from, first, stop labeling good and bad. You're aware that, okay, this feels uncomfortable, and at some point I don't like it at some level, but that's okay. I'm just going to stop that and actually be almost curious, like a child, like, oh, this is something new that I've never felt before. Let's imagine a child experiencing that, and let me just go into it, fully be present with it, and just notice the sensations. Feels like this, feels like this. You can at the beginning go into your mind to describe the sensations, because that will help, but at some point it's even best if you just stop as best you can, and are fully present in the sensation itself, because then you will have that embodied confidence and that embodied feeling that, yes, as I am present with this, it actually feels okay, and as it starts to move, it actually does feel pleasurable. And another technique that is very useful for this is what I shared in the video, find your peace anytime, anywhere, and it's to shift our focus from being completely on content, so on sensations, and just have an awareness, broader awareness of the sensations, but as well of the space around us, the context in which everything is happening. If you want, you can just check that video, because there's a more in-depth explanation of this, but this will create, by its very nature of this focus, a huge spaciousness for anything and everything that might be happening inside of us. And with that type of broader awareness, everything pretty much in us just does this. It relaxes. It's a beautiful way to relax the mind, the emotions, and to help the body just do its thing, move the energy, and for our mind not to freak out as things come to the surface and just are released. As they are released, they're not released out there, they are integrated, they become part of our life force again. So they increase our vitality, they increase our creativity, our natural connection, presence, loving nature. It's becoming more whole again. So I think this is what I wanted to share with you. This was a little longer than I was expecting, but well, as I said in the beginning, it was something that I felt just inspired to share, that it wanted to be shared. So here it is. I hope it was useful. Let me know if you have any questions. Comment, like, share, do what you feel inspired to do. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. And I know that many people don't even want to look at something like this, this topic. And I appreciate you for actually being here, for being willing to look into yourself and to start bringing back those pushed against energies and those disowned parts of your own consciousness. Bring them back into wholeness. We'll all benefit from it. So thank you. I'll see you on the next video.